I think we are live. I think it says we are live, so we must be live. Welcome, everyone. It is a pleasure to have you all here. Welcome to Creating the Future's Integrity Meeting. For those of you who are new to this is our board is sort of no longer thinking of themselves as a board, but an integrity team. So this is our integrity meeting for November of 2021. I am Hildy Gottlieb, and I can't figure out where 2021 went. I don't understand how it's November of 2021, but here we are. If you are watching and would like to participate in this conversation, please do so on Twitter. Twitter is the only place that we will be looking. If you're watching afterwards and you want to post something at the blog, that's great. But the only place we will be looking today is on Twitter. And if you will use the hashtag Creating the Future, that is how we will be able to find you. Today is a big day. Our normal integrity team is being joined by a cohort who is talking about applying catalytic thinking to the very thing we've been talking about, which is succession planning. And I'm just very, very excited to have you all here today. What will happen in this cohort is these conversations will be open to the public. We'll be using Creating the Future as the example here and exploring via catalytic thinking. One of the reasons we do that is because we like to prove that a lot of the things that we keep very, very secret in our organizations actually can be public. They can be open. We don't have to have the doors closed near as often as we think we do. And there's so much benefit to opening the doors, which we found over, it's almost been a decade, which is just amazing. The private conversations will be had in between these public sessions. So you can feel comfortable to talk theoretically or talk about creating the future. If there's any questions that you all have who are in the cohort and they pertain directly to your organization, you'd rather talk about that privately, we'll be doing that in the sessions in between that aren't public. Let's start where we always start, which is sharing who we are, introducing ourselves, talking about where you are. If you can provide a land acknowledgement to talk about the lands that many of us are sitting on that were taken, in some cases taken by treaty, where there wasn't a whole lot of choice, in some cases taken without treaty. And so if you'd like to tell us where you are, acknowledge the land that you're sitting on. If you want to tell us a little bit about the weather, great, but please share something that is exciting or awesome or just meaningful in your life right now. So I'm going to start us off with Nancy Iannone.
Nancy, I knew she was going to do that.
Tell us where you are and something that is meaningful in your life right now.
I am in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. So weather is beautiful. We are surrounded by Colorado River Indian tribes land. So there are 4 tribes. Mojave and Chemehuevi are native to this area. We also have some Navajo and Hopi members who were brought into the area when they were resettled. So we have a 4-tribe consortium that controls a lot of the land surrounding our towns. And for the most part, I think that we are all respectful of each other, but it is sometimes very interesting because Parker Downriver sits directly on leased crit land. And every so often they say, if you don't do some of the things we want you to do, we're going to make your town move. So, you know, there still are a lot of, when we're talking about what's possible, there's still a lot of room for those discussions here. Been doing catalytic thinking a long time. Right now I'm bringing that to a local Arizona State University campus business plan competition that they've been running the last few years. It initially was for people who are planning startups. Now it's for businesses that are in their first 5 years. And so they can get a mentor, which is one of the roles that I'm taking, to assist them with their business plan in looking forward. And so that's the perfect opportunity to bring catalytic thinking in and help people really look at the conditions that will help them get to where they want to be.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And it's one of the powerful reasons that we do land acknowledgements is that space for possibility. It is one thing to just make a statement and say, I'm sitting in lands that were traditionally the lands of the Tohono, which is where I'm sitting. It's another thing to say that and then to personally commit to making things better, to decolonizing, to doing the work, to make fair what has not been fair for a really long time. So thank you for bringing that up, Nancy. Justin, what has been meaningful in your life, and where are you sitting today?
Great, thank you, Hildy. So I am sitting on Piscataway and Nacotchtank tribal lands that they use to thrive upon and exist. It is now known as Washington, D.C. What is exciting to me, or well, part of what is actually exciting was I'm taking this terminology from my kids who are in school, that now they speak about people having the common cold, as opposed to just a cold or sick. They're very descriptive and defensive, I think, in declaring that. So we had the common cold come through the household, and it is now past. So feeling all healthy again. And I had a chance actually to be outside. It is a crisp fall day here where some leaves are changing before they die, but it's in the 60s. And crisp and sunny. So a beautiful day that I was able to get outside. So that's what I'm thankful for today.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. I'm glad you're here.
And just as a courtesy for folks, I didn't do time management particularly well coming into this meeting. So I'm listening to all the introductions, and then I will go dark for probably about 15 minutes. So just if you see just my name, it means that I'm checked out for a little bit, but then I will come back in.
Wonderful. Thank you. Angie, welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angie Eikenberry, and I sit here on Omaha and Sioux Nations land that is now called Omaha, Nebraska. And it's also a very nice day today, though I haven't been outside yet. I teach at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and I'll say something that's been very meaningful and awesome for me these last few months is working with a new cohort of PhD students who are very diverse in their perspectives and all sort of demographic areas, and trying to help mentor them to be scholars in the field, and we need their perspectives and representations, and trying to continue to increase the diversity in our field. So that's what's keeping me meaningful and busy these days.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Wonderful. Donna Shines, welcome.
Thank you, Hildy. I am in Idaho, and thank you for asking the question, because I watched as you posted yours and Dimitri's trip, giving acknowledgement to the lands, and I needed to look to see whose land I am sitting on. And we were Shoshone-Bannock tribes. We are Shoshone-Bannock tribes. So I'm going to do a little more investigating on that. Thank you for bringing that to the forefront. I think I loved watching and listening everywhere you guys went. So thank you for that. So Idaho, we are kind of like Justin, we're kind of getting that brisk 50s to low 60s. So yes, I still could get a little gardening in, but no, I probably won't. It's kind of like you start changing the seasons. What's bringing me a lot of joy is this last couple of years, I had to really go inside myself because it just took me to places that I didn't recognize with a lot of anger, and that's just not who I am, and a lot of frustration. So I've really gone inside and just been really exploring what it takes to be at my best. And what I can share with others so that they're exploring the same thing. And thank you, Nancy and Angie, both for talking about mentoring. That's what I just get to do. And it's between adults and kids in our program, but it's communities and it's community members. And I just get to play with a lot of people. And Zoom has been a pretty cool avenue, thankfully, to creating the future that I learned it 8 or 9 years ago. So it was no big deal to us when we had to pivot. But now I'm bringing in more adults and just saying, let's get together. Let's think together. I don't need like-minded people around me. I need people to come together and think and listen. And so the whole structure of creating the future and catalytic thinking, decision-making, collective enoughness is all what I continue to play in. And it does bring me a lot of joy. It's hard still for me sometimes because I just need the practice more and more. And when we went offline, it's like, I don't really want to be with people. And that's not me either. And so now this kind of platform, I absolutely love it. So thank you all for allowing me to be a part of this today.
Glad you're here. Very, very glad you're here. Carl Wilding, welcome.
Hello, everyone. I was about to say good evening, but it's not good evening for most of you, is it? It's just after 6 p.m. in the evening here. I'm in a place called St. Albans, just outside London. So the clocks have gone back here, so summertime has ended. So it goes dark now at probably about 5 p.m. and it's been quite cold. We've had our first frosts for the year. I'm good, actually. No particular reason. I'm sort of busy with work and stuff, which has been really nice. And it's good to be amongst good people, which I am now. So thank you for letting me join you all.
Thrilled to have you here. Jackie Bradley, hello, welcome.
Hi, hello everyone. So I'm Jackie. I am on Wyandotte and Anishinaabeg lands, now called Michigan. And many of my updates over the past season have been about my garden, and that time is coming to a close here. But was able to bake a pumpkin pie from a pumpkin that I grew myself. So that felt like a very good capstone to my first real garden this year.
That is awesome. Yay. Wonderful.
Jackie, you're talking to Hildy, who is a gardener. So you truly have touched her heart there with that.
I think there's several gardeners in the room here. It's very exciting. Yay, 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 yay. Eli Angote, welcome.
Thanks, everyone. Eli here, sitting on Ohlone land in a little town called Emerald Hills, right next to Redwood City. I've got an incredible view of the bay. I can see the San Mateo Bridge. I can see Mount Diablo. So appreciating being in nature, surrounded by trees. I've been making friends with some squirrels here that visit regularly. And I'm just in awe of how, seamlessly nature expresses itself, heals itself. I'm so glad to be here to be part of the conversation, celebrating hiring someone new for our San Mateo office that we hired in about 3 days. I mean, it's an incredible young man that was a perfect fit. So it's always nice when the magic happens and the dots connect. So I'm glad to be here and looking forward to see what we can build together. Thank you.
Oh, that's exciting. You've been talking about growing your team, and this is really exciting.
Yeah, really good
Wonderful,
stuff.
wonderful, wonderful. And Nora Kennedy, welcome.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Nora Kennedy. I am sitting on the ancestral territory of the Michizagig, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, in the region of the Ojibwa and the nation of the Anishinaabe. In other words, I'm in a small town called Orangeville, which is about an hour and a half north of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. So I'm thrilled to be here. This is my first connection with this group. So I'm just here to learn. I love the whole idea of the catalytic thinking, and I was excited by the idea of focusing on the succession planning, because it's something that I am working on right now with my organization. I'm the executive director of a not-for-profit organization that provides shelter, housing, and counseling for women leaving violent relationships, and as well as a sexual assault center. So I'm here, eager and ready to learn, and I'm excited to spend some time with all of you and getting to know all about this.
Oh, Nora, welcome. It's wonderful to have you here. Wonderful. Mark Habner, welcome.
Thank you. I'm on Kortog land, which is part of, I've forgotten, there are probably 12 or 13 families. They weren't truly tribes here on Long Island on the east end of New York. Part of the Iroquois Nation overall, and part of the Haudenosaunee, there we go, who I've touched on for governance advice for a lot of years, it turned out. So that's kind of a good thing. So we're trying to bring that into our, we're creating because of the lack of response from our local government, we're creating a community engagement set of community engagement programs. We're going to be dabbling with the radical middle this year. We're going to be thinking about campaign finance reform at a very local level. And all of these things have to do with creating a new paradigm and not using the tools of the master to fix the master's house. And I hear this language all the time. Very angry with you and Dimitri for introducing me to these prospects, because that's all I'm hearing. So when somebody said, well, we don't need campaign finance reform, this is last night. What we need is to go to the ethics committee and straighten out the $30,000 over that so-and-so had. Yeah, well, except for the 5 people that are on the board are all good friends, and that one of the people on one of the lawyers in the ethics committee is their son-in-law. So I'm thinking we're not going to be able to fix this using the master's tools. Just thinking.
Well, if we have corrupted you, Mark, then our work here is done. Meeting is over.
Well, I'm also I was going to say bludgeoning. I'm also introducing this to other people. And we'll get into the idea of mentoring, because it's important. Apparently, our average age is 70 years old for the groups that I'm in right now. And unless we move that out, we're not going to be socially learning very well. So there it is.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you. Andrew Shulman, welcome. Andrew, are you there? Well, we will have Andrew join us when he joins in. Okay, I think that is everyone. And oh, Dimitri, you and me. Oops.
I just want to put my hand up.
Oops. Yeah.
You've been replaced.
And just for Nora and anyone else who is watching who is not used to us, Dimitri's actually sitting right there. So while it does look like he is in a lovely office, show them the person behind you, honey. There's a fake person behind him.
He's very busy. He never stops working. So I really like him.
No, and he doesn't move a lot either. He doesn't move a lot. Dimitri, tell us where you are.
I'm in a nice office.
You're in a nice office. Tell us where you are and what has been exciting and awesome in your life.
I also am in Tucson, Arizona, just across the desk here from Hildy, in the traditional lands of the Tohono people that continues to grow their community, which is a really kind of wonderful thing in the sense of so many Native communities around the country have literally, been wiped out of existence. And this community exists and is continuing to grow slowly, but is continuing to grow. They're dealing with all the problems that we have imposed on them, but they're working on it. So it is kind of a thoughtful, reflective thing to think about that. Um, I have two things. One is an awesome, and the other, before I get into the awesome, I want to remind people that I'm monitoring the Twitter feed with the hashtag creating the future. So if you are watching this live and would like to chime in, if you've got an awesome or you have a question or a comment or whatever, I'll be keeping an eye on that and make sure that I bring that to everyone's attention and so that we can discuss that. My awesome is the fact that, and this might be a little boring, but I am a granddad. So, you know, as a new granddad, you kind of sort of become enamored with this little baby that you think is absolutely awesome. And she is. I mean, this is not completely unbiased. But I had a picture that my youngest had, my eldest, I should say, had sent the other day. And I wanted to share it with you so that you can get an idea as to why I am excited. Let's see if I can pull it up. Huh. Oh, well. I'll put it in the box.
And I'm sure it's adorable.
It is absolutely you as, you know, I wanted to leave this session with a big smile on everybody's face. And I am fairly confident this would have gotten a big smile. So whatever the reason I'm not being able to pull it up right now, I will shortly. And
I'll talk slow for my awesome, so you can find it.
Okay.
You can find it. I am Hilda Gottlieb. I am in Tucson, Arizona, sitting on the traditional lands of the Tohono O'odham and the Pascua Yaqui. My awesome, and there are so many right now, but first of all, my awesome is that this cohort is beginning. I have been very excited about this. This is the culmination of about 1.5 years, 2 years worth of work. And so it feels like sort of giving birth, which is very, very awesome. Not nearly as painful. So that's a good thing. Last night, yesterday, Dimitri and I decided that we were just going to basically watch Apple TV all day long. There's so many cool things on Apple TV. And so we just sat down and said, let's watch this. And then let's watch an episode of that. We wound up watching the first episode of something called 1971. And it is a documentary series, probably going to be 3, 4, 5 episodes on how the music of that particular year, 1971, not only reflected changes going on in society, but in many cases was leading and supporting that change. And I can't wait to watch the next episode. It was just remarkable how much of the pain we are going through right now is so similar to the pain that we were going through 50 years ago. So many of the same themes, so many of the same real pain, real hardship and agony of people dying. We then flipped over to something I had saved on the DVR, which was a CNN special about 3, 4, 5 months ago it was called Marvin Gaye, What's Going On? And it was all about the song, What's Going On? And the power of that album, what it meant in particular to the Black community, but also what it meant to activists. It's just it was a very moving day. And we watched some comedies too. So we got to watch some sci-fi, we got to watch the Foundation series for Dimitri, and I liked it too. And Nancy, you will like it. If you haven't already seen it, Nancy, you will like it. But yeah, it was pretty remarkable to be re-immersed in just that particular year and all that was going on. Angie just sent a note asking if we got to watch Ted Lasso. We're Ted Lasso junkies. So we were watching it like the minute an episode would drop, we were watching Ted Lasso. And if you all are not Ted Lasso fans and you need just a bit of joy in your life, Ted Lasso is just pure joy. It is just people being their best, which is awesome, just awesome. So now I do believe that's everybody now that Dimitri and I have gone. And what you got here, honey? That's our little girl.
And that's Athena Petropoulos. And Dimitri sent this the other day, and you can't help but smile when you look at her face. And she engages with her family through an iPad, which is sort of a sign of our time, but she's always reaching for the iPad because there's grandpa, there's grandma, and there's her cousins and the other people who are there. So I wanted to share this with the getting a smile from everybody. Oops.
She is pretty awesome. Okay, honey. Got it? There we go. We're back. We're back. Yes, we're going to be stuck until everybody says something nice about our grandchild. We want 7 billion people saying how adorable she is.
Well, this is her first international.
Oh, goodness. Well, we are going to be diving in and continuing the conversation about succession planning. We're going to be doing that using catalytic thinking. And so I am going to share. Zoom has changed something. I don't even know. Okay, that's fine. There we go. I want to just remind us all, do a little quick primer on catalytic thinking. This is a visual explanation. There's also a set of questions that I'll share with you. But just to show you where we are today, we really spent a lot of time last time talking about whose lives will be affected by any actions that we might take, and really just listening to notice what is coming up when we talk about catalytic thinking. And you all, in preparing for today, saw that wonderful list. And Jackie, thank you again. Jackie is just the queen of documenting our meetings. It's just perfect. And so that's really where we were playing the last time. Really just diving in when it comes to succession planning. There's many, many more people who will be affected by the succession plan of any organization than just the person that we think of as the person, because that's generally how we think about succession planning. And if you looked at the notes from last time, you saw that we were broadening that, saying it's not replacing a person with another person, but looking at all of the various people whose lives will be impacted by anything we do. Today, we're going to reach higher and ask, what would success look like for all of those people? And so the questions that we will be asking, and y'all have seen these questions, but what we asked already is who will be affected, and then listening to those people. And then we're looking at question 3 here, right here, which is grounded in what we've learned. What is the highest potential outcome for each of those parties, including the highest potential outcome for each of us? What would good look like? And so those are the kinds of questions that we're going to be tackling today. Because if we don't reach for what is possible, that highest potential outcome, what we wind up doing is just reacting to the present. And what that does is it ignores all of the possibility. So it starts the conversation here. And as we frequently talk about in catalytic thinking, wherever a conversation starts, it will naturally get more narrow and more doing and more myopically focused on how will we do this, what will we do, bringing up actions. And so we intentionally push that conversation up into what is possible, so that we're making sure that we're capturing everything about what is possible, because that's part of reality too. It's just so funny how we are taught that all that possibility is not reality. You know, we're taught to say things like "get real," but all that possibility is part of our reality. So we're just acknowledging that and embracing it. And so let's get started. As you think about succession planning, We can use creating the future as an example, or if you want to be thinking just in general, if you're thinking about an organization in particular, let's just ask sort of a general question about what does succession planning make possible? What is the best possible outcome of having an ongoing succession plan?
I'll jump in really quick because this is something we've been exploring for quite a few years after a funder really questioned, what if something happens to you? What's going to happen to this program? We're a very small organization, myself full-time and a part-time person. We grow 5 to 10% every year, but we've never grown our staff. We just found a sweet spot and we just keep moving forward. And so what it means for me is this, and I change daily on it. So today, what it means is to know that there is someone with the passion that I have for what we do and for our mission. And at that point, my excitement is, how do we get there? Do we co-direct for a while when she's ready to come in? Do we, but I had no one to transition me. I mean, it was me and I just went, okay. And then we became a nonprofit the next year. And I had no idea what I was doing then. And I still don't feel like I do 18 years later, but we're still here and we're healthy. So we're doing something right. We need to capture that. So I want that passion. I've got that technical, but I need her also looking for that technical brain, because to me, she's the bigger risk, not me. But I want that person to come in fresh and new. I want that person not to do the way I've done it, but to stay true to mission, to continue to grow our business plan 5 to 10% a year, and to bring amazing relationships together, supported in ways that, more and more people just go, wait, I want to be on board with this. Whether it's funders or volunteers or board or whomever. So to me, we've created something good that doesn't, unless we can get all the way through our catalytic thinking to go, every human being should have the support of at least one more human being. When we get there, then we don't need to do what we do. We just keep rippling good and encouraging that and modeling that. So that would be my ideal. And that's what I think this next person, I think that's the great. We're going to have the great together. We're going to know what the great is. And then we're going to shoot for that however we get there. And hopefully that person will have great new ideas too.
Awesome. Wonderful. Nora.
I think one of the things for me when I think about what's the best possible outcome of a succession plan, a well thought out succession plan, is not so much that you're looking to be, as Donna sort of alluded to, that you're bringing somebody in to just pick up your vision and keep that alive and replace yourself. But I think that it's embedded in the values, the core values of the organization, that the work that has been done, the values and the culture of the organization can be maintained and enhanced, and rather so that the organization can move into that new chapter without fear holding it back, because there's always so much fear with somebody new coming in. What if they don't do things the same way? There's the opportunity to really embed the values and the culture into the organization, the people who actually are going to still be here, that no matter who else comes in, those are foundational and will continue regardless of what the strategic directives are. The foundation will be maintained.
Yeah, that fear of change is huge, huge. What else? What else does succession planning make possible? Angie.
I will jump in.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about sustainability, and it seems that this is an important thing that could be made possible. And by sustainability, not just the organization itself, but also like the people who are active in it to be able to sustain their participation, avoid burnout and that sort of thing, and make the most out of, what the resources are that are available. And I'll just say one more thing about sustainability is I guess, as long as the work is still needed, not just sustaining for the sake of sustaining, but that there's still, things that need to be done, that the mission of the organization still is important to achieve.
That's big.
Carl has some-
Yeah, Carl.
So just sort of following on from Angie and possibly being sort of counterfactual almost, what it also enables is nothing to change. Because sometimes the person or the people doing the succession planning are trying to stop things from changing because they want their view of the world to sort of carry on. And I'm sure this must be the case for sort of nonprofits in the US as well as here in the UK. One of the problems sometimes that we do have is that I feel sometimes that people want to preserve our sector in aspect and that they don't want things to change. So it's not just as simple as succession planning, good or bad. It's about what type of succession planning.
So what would good look like then? If what we're talking about is stasis, almost forced stasis, what would good look like?
So my opening salvo on that one to everyone is that as human beings, we all find change difficult and we don't necessarily sort of look forward to it. So good succession planning for me, a starting point is a recognition that actually change actually can be refreshing and sometimes it's what organizations need, especially if you are planning the succession for someone who has been in post for a long time.
Yep. And we've mentioned that sort of fear of change, and the flip side of that, Donna, you mentioned is somebody with a perspective that's fresh and new, and Nora, you talked about doing it without a fear of change. I mean that is a theme that seems to be already popping up. Let's talk about that. What would good look like, given that people are afraid of change? One of the things that we face, it's so interesting, using Creating the Future as an example, or the example of anyone who is not necessarily a founder, but a long time leader. There is so much fear that person is going to leave. They're the ones who brought stability. They're the ones, I mean, it has been mentioned a couple of times as we've talked about succession planning over the past year, sort of casually, and then talked about it last time. Very specifically, y'all mentioned the thought of this is scary. The thought that Dimitri and I might not be here one day is scary. The thought that, Donna, you might leave the mentoring network to the people in your community, the people on your board. Nora, the thought that you might leave your organization, that's scary to people. So what would good look like? What does succession planning really make possible for all those people who are afraid that, oh my gosh, you're going to leave? What does it make possible?
That actually ties in with the last question and the note I just made, which is it's a wonderful opportunity for exactly what we're doing here, which is co-creation. So that all of those people are a part of the process in moving forward.
Which is an opportunity for inclusion and engagement. And yeah, wow. Nora.
I was just going to talk about the inclusion and engagement piece actually as well, Hildy, because one of the things that I've been discovering, I'm working towards that transition in the next couple of years for myself. I've been with the organization for over 15 years, and it came across to me about a year ago in one of our staff surveys. There was just a comment, and the comment, I can't even remember what it was, but I remember realizing that it was about the fear of the future and what happens when I moved on. And that was one of my triggers to really start getting very active about this process and to be very transparent about it, because I want people to understand that it's a natural process in my life, but also in the organizational life. and that there are terrific opportunities that are going to come out of it. So trying to include as many, my management team, my board, my seniors, so they all know that I have a timeline and are working with me towards what's that going to look like. And my hope is that by having that inclusion piece and having as many people involved in that process, that they will ultimately end up with a very strong organization as I'm exiting out for someone else to enter into and pick up from there.
Huge, huge. Carl, did you have something?
I think possibly Nora just said it, but I was going to riff off your point about fear and say the highest possibility is that it frees us from fear, because as an observer of our sector, too many decisions are driven by fear.
One of the other things that comes to mind is a standardization of systems within an organization, because especially as founders, I always keep this Rolodex, dating myself, with the names of the vendors over here, but in another room I've got this over there, and this is the way I normally do things, and it's I how I'm doing this, as opposed to this is the process that we use, and we're open to have different systems, different whatever. So when a person does step in, because it is a transition of people ultimately, when a new person steps in, they don't spend a huge amount of time trying to figure out where everything is and what needs to happen. And even if you have the mentoring of this person for a period of time, without those systems in place, there's still a lot of figuring out, which is a waste of time and energy that they could be applying toward the mission, the organization, and whatever.
Yeah. Really and truly. Eli.
Yeah, these are all great thoughts. For me, I kind of came
can't
from
hear you. Oh, the reason I can't hear you is so long. It's me. It's my problem.
All right. So I'm coming at this from a very different direction. So as a founder, I have to be in optimal shape to lead the organization. I have to engage in self-care. I need to meditate. I need to go do yoga. So if this can be infused throughout the ecosystem, then it means that people are going to be more able to deal with change, to deal with fear, to deal with all of the vicissitudes of life. So I've begun having team meditations, in every meeting. We take 5 minutes and we breathe, we sit quietly. And it's hard, and I've got this challenge going in our Slack channel where, the person with the most consecutive number of days meditating, gets a prize at the end of the month. So gamifying and increasing, engagement in these practices, I think can be really valuable to create this culture of kindness, of compassion, values that I think should be at the core of every organization, because that allows us to have that pause between stimulus and response that leads us to be better catalytic thinkers and really, bridge those gaps and invite others into our vision.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That really gets to culture. Nora mentioned culture before, the values and the culture. The ability for, and we talked about this a little bit last time when we were talking about the tendency to see succession planning as replacing a person with another person. You may recall that one of my favorite stories was talking to someone who desperately needed a succession plan. We asked her if she had a succession plan, and her answer was, yes, I have Joe. And Joe left. So then somebody else had Joe. But so as we think about what you're really talking about, Eli, in culture is a system. Culture is a system of transmitting our values. And so what does succession planning mean what does it make possible for establishing, if we don't already have, it's interesting, organizations have a culture, they just don't usually codify it. What you're doing is sort of codifying it in practice. But what does good look like for those systems that that transcend? It doesn't matter who the person is.
I'll jump in, and I know I've missed a fair amount of the conversation, so I'll just reply to that question and hopefully not step on anyone else's toes who said something. But I think part of what you were just talking about, Hildy, there is this question of control, and I don't think we talk about that clearly enough. That it's not just founders, but it's just as human beings, we actually exist in the future more so than we exist anywhere else. We're always worried about what tomorrow is. And we're doing everything we do today to secure ourselves for tomorrow. And I think that, that sense of control that we bake into organizations, I mean, everything that we put into place, the bylaws, the budgets, they are all control mechanisms. And I think we have to acknowledge that that's about creating competence. And that as we think about succession planning, there is an element of it that we have to think about, that this is a question of how are things going to be controlled when people leave, who we are accustomed and enculturated into controlling it, whatever that is, whether it's beneficial or not. But there is something about that kind of emotional component to this that I feel is actually one of the challenges, is that we don't really speak to that, which is, what does it mean to create a system that allows individuals to let go of control, or the sense of control that they feel the organization needs to have moving forward. I'll just stop there.
I can't hear you, Hildy. I can't hear you. Can I have people here? Something happened to your mic. Nope.
You need to unmute. All right, can you guys hear me through Dimitri's?
Yes.
All right. Oh, that's great. Justin, speaking of control, the comment I was going to make is that it is an illusion that any of us have control. And that's pretty funny that I lost my mic at that exact moment. So thank you. Yeah, Mark.
So what that was an example of was feedback loops. What was that? That was an
Hang on. Dimitri, you need to mute.
What that was an example of was the domination control paradigm, if you will. Whereas when something happened that you needed somebody to step in, the partnership and respect and cooperation took over. And this is partly resilience, which is going to lead to an adaptation, because you're not going to do the same thing again. There's a social learning involved. You had put something out, and I don't remember where it was, talking about resilience being reactionary, which I totally agree with. The process orientation after the storm comes. We should probably talk about this separately because it's big, but what I'm trying to get our organizations to do is to become not organizations, but organisms, so that there's not an org chart with somebody at the top. And there's not key components that require people to fill the job, but rather creating jobs around the people. Because I've seen so much over a lot of years in corporate America that they've got a job description, and boy, you're just really good at about 80% of that, and 20% you might as well just kiss your paycheck goodbye, because you're never going to like it, you're never going to do it well. So rather than that, especially with a volunteer organization, you're not looking to do that to people. We're looking to find out what they do really, really, really well and have them do that 100% of the time. If you need something else, that other 20% done, ask somebody else to step up who actually likes it. So if it's filling out timesheets or doing your expense reports or whatever, all that garbage that you got to do that distracts you from your normal love of your job, find somebody else to do it. And it's not a concept that people are comfortable with, because if they don't have that job description, things start to fall apart. It's shaky. It's not nailed down. So that's partly what I'm trying to do with our organizations.
I'll jump in to say I think that's a great point. I like that idea of the organism and the working around people's strengths. And then also you think about this kind of in relation to what Justin and others were saying about control, like you need redundancies, right, in place. So succession planning maybe can make possible to create redundancy. Sounds like a bad word, but it's right, like organizational or organism survival, right, is based on this sort of having backup, right, having people you can trust that are going to be able to do the work if you are not there anymore. So trust, I guess, is part of that too. And of course, that's so different from, building an efficient organization, right, where you have one person whose job it is to do X and Y, and of course easier to control that, but then compromises our ability to have healthy succession, I think.
Yeah, yes, it's tremendous. Okay, all right. Did the echo go away? Just nod, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Because I had to turn my speaker off. This is going to be fun.
I'll turn my speaker on.
This is a test of control. There's so much in what you all are talking about here. There's just so much in that juiciness. One of the things that I've seen in some organizations is starting to, rather than job descriptions, starting to build around roles, and whoever happens to be comfortable in a particular role is the one who steps up to take on this particular task. And it's fluid. And again, what that makes possible, because that's a doing thing, that's an action thing, and that's way down the line in terms of the kinds of in terms of catalytic thinking. But what it makes possible when you've got that fluidity of roles and what people are good at, is that, again, you're focused more on systems than people. One of the things that I'm always concerned about with succession planning is that it becomes about the person, and the person in the job and the role. And that job may change 900 times in the next 5 years. I mean, think about somebody who was in a job at the end of 2019. That changed 1,600 times in the first 6 months of the next year. And so it's, to me, what succession planning makes possible in that case is to create systems, culture, codifying those systems, so that you're never reliant on one person. I mean, the tendency, again, to think, well, okay, Dimitri's gone, we need to replace Dimitri. Donna's gone, we need to replace Donna. What happens if something happens to Dimitri's replacement or Donna's replacement? It's not even just, my succession plan is Joe, and Joe's not there even before I leave. What happens if a month after I leave, Joe is gone? So we looking at what it makes possible in my mind, is to create systems that, I loved that word sustainability, Angie, that to create systems that create calm, that systems that sort of create, yeah, we got this. We're okay. And if Hildy leaves, if Nancy leaves, and if Mark leaves, we're okay. We're not going to like it. We're going to miss them, and we'll get some cool new people. But it's not reliant on a human. It's reliant on those systems that create sustainability. That excites me.
Justin, in the comments, I like your idea of continuity as opposed to succession. So it becomes a continuity planning session.
Leave it to Justin to have fabulous language.
Well, I think because some of that is if we are thinking about it from a systems perspective, which is to Mark's point, it's a system that needs to continue on. It's not the individual people. And so the continuity is really of the capacity, whatever capacity we're naming, whether that's leadership capacity or talent, specific talents or technical capacity. But if what we're asking ourselves is, to your point, Hildy, which is, what is it that needs to be sustained? What needs continuity to it? And then we back into that and say, well, what would it take to ensure continuity? And it does, it helps us kind of disassociate from individual personalities. So even, Eli, when you talk about sort of the energy that a founder brings in, which is, like we need to acknowledge that it's not always just the great ideas. It's the fact that the founder is willing to turn themselves inside and out to do it. That's a level of energy that we have to acknowledge. Either that's not a sustainable level of energy, or we need to figure out how to replicate that energy in a different way, if we do deem it to actually be necessary to the success of whatever it is that we're doing.
The energy is necessary. It is, if the energy is embodied in a person, is the difference. That energy, that passion for the mission, that passion for the vision, that ability to see what's possible and hold space for those values, that energy is important. But it being embodied in one person is dangerous. I love that word of energy. It's what good looks like is that and I'm not using the word energy as a good thing. I'm not putting judgment on it, but it's an energy towards it's a physics thing. It's an energy that is there, which is what draws people to your work, Eli, which draws people to certainly. I mean, Eli, talk a little bit, just very, very briefly, about what your company does, because what your company does is relatively mundane. And so, comparing a mundane company to a company that does something that is just a logistical thing, but people want to be there because of that energy. Talk just a little bit about what y'all do.
Yeah, so we connect notaries and attorneys who, need a particular level of notarization. So it's a concierge experience. We provide a bunch of additional services for estate planners, so literally soup to nuts. They could literally upload a draft of their documents to our website, and we do everything else. We prepare the documents for signature, we get them scanned. If there's a deed to be recorded, we do that. We prepare binders. So this frees up attorneys to be with their clients and to do what they love. And when the word energy came up, I thought about vibration, right? So if we can all, synchronize, to the vibration of the founder, whoever brings the most, that it really percolates throughout the ecosystem, and it trickles, even ripples out into anyone we touch, right? The notaries we work with, the clients and their clients. It's a ripple effect. So I see our business as a social enterprise. It's a vehicle for change, right? By prioritizing who we're bringing in, as those who, traditionally have lacked a seat at the table, it sends a message, to that entire person's ecosystem. And by treating people with dignity, with respect, with compassion, even if they drop the ball, I think it makes a big difference, and it creates this stickiness, right? Some of our team members we've worked with since 2012, 2012, so almost 10 years. And they've brought their people in, and it's this continuous cycle of virtue, of helping to promote goodness. So it's possible to, like you said, Hildy, to codify that. That's kind of what I'm actually doing right now, literally as we speak. How do we capture all of these values and best practices, and then those new people who come in have already set checklists and tools and SOPs and things to follow.
Huge. Thank
And it's hard, and it's really hard. I gotta say, it's not easy.
It's work.
Yeah.
It's work. Yeah, it's work. And one of the things that especially a founder does, but certainly somebody who's been there for a long time, is they hold the space for always walking the line of the values. They know those values, and I'm thinking of someone here locally in Tucson who was with their organization for 30 years. They were not the founder, but they were there for 30 years, and they were brilliant. They were known throughout the community as that mission was that person. I mean, you saw him coming, and you knew what you were going to be talking about. Powerful and absolutely wonderful. So it didn't have to be the founder. They weren't the founder, but what succession planning does in my mind, thinking as a founder, and this is Dimitri and my third startup, because we're not too bright and didn't stop after 2. We're masochists and wanted one more. It is the thought, the balance between always holding the line of the values versus fear, because that's where it goes. If somebody's afraid, their values go out the window and they wind up reacting to that thing that they're afraid of. And so and I've seen it. I've seen it, unfortunately, too many times. I saw it with that 30-year person who was absolutely beloved. The board decided that it was time for a change, and went completely, and they lost respect. But it all came because of the board's fear. And so what does it look like? That, to me, in part, what it is the assuaging of the fear and the continuity of those values. To me, that's the balance. Mark, go ahead.
I'm going to pull trees into the discussion. Justin had said that it's more like continuity as opposed to succession. And I thought about trees because continuity is when you chop off a root, but the other roots take up the slack. They start doing the job of the lost root. So that's what continuity is. We can lose 10% of the leaves of a tree without any loss to the life of the tree, to bugs and all the insects that need to eat those top 10% without losing the continuity of that tree. Succession is me going out and planting younger trees underneath the older trees that are going to die. Succession is something different, but also necessary. So I'd like to use both terms. Continuity maybe within the organism. I'm still working with it, so sorry.
And perhaps succession is one of the conditions that leads to continuity. Perhaps the real outcome we're looking for is continuity of values, continuity of mission, continuity of vision. And succession is one of many conditions that leads to that. What else? What does succession make possible for the community? Or continuity make possible for the community?
This kind of connects to what I was saying earlier about if the work still needs to be done, and seems that succession planning can make possible for the community a revisiting if the work of the organization is needed in the community or is making a difference. as part of reevaluating that is that there's an opportunity for it with succession planning.
Beautiful. Yes. Wow. Justin.
Well, to add to Angie's comment, and then is I think done well, it eliminates strategic planning, or it's integrated in with that. It's all sort of tied together. I've always thought, like, how can you do strategic planning without financial planning? And now if we add without continuity planning, I mean, they're all really sort of interrelated. So that's one piece. But my initial response was for the community. It creates confidence and predictability that the services will still, or the benefit, whatever it is that they're providing, will continue.
Yeah. Nora and then Donna.
I was going along those same lines. I think for the community, especially when I'm thinking about the sector that I'm in, which is not-for-profit and human services, vulnerable populations, it's the confidence and the trust that the organization is going to be able to live up to its mandate and is going to be there for the community partners who are continuing to make referrals or take referrals. That there's that seamless transition, and that the organization will continue living up to its commitments.
Beautiful.
And its values.
Yeah.
Do things that way.
Donna.
I'm on that same line. I've been been in this community for a long time, and I have watched so many nonprofits change leadership. Typically, it's every 3 to 4 years. And so it's very, very hard because relationships are gone. You're rebuilding new relationships. You just feel like they just went on pause, and maybe they started back where they were at, but probably they started back about 5 years and are building again. And so I'm kind of in that same place. What it makes possible, if we're doing continuity, if we're doing succession, is that trust that we've built in a relationship with communities does have some continuance. It's huge. We talk about going back to trust. None of this happens unless we can build trust with the people that we're doing this with and our communities. And that takes a lot of time. That takes, some consistency of leadership, but not leadership. I like the way we're talking leadership. We don't have leadership. We just have people who care about this that all go out and share it in a positive way and ripple goodness. And so, I've got the name or the title, which I'd rather have none, because we all lead from the middle and we all create what this has become. And we'll all create even better, if we do this. I'm loving this conversation. But I do feel that most nonprofits in our area change directorship about every 3 to 4 years. And our schools are in that position now too. And we deal with 52 schools in 4 communities. So it is rebuilding every time we've got big change. And we're good at it. That's what we do. But wouldn't it be cool to be able to just have those trusting relationships that we just slip back in and keep moving forward on the work that needs to be done, if it needs to be done.
Wow. That whole continuity of trust, continuity of relationships, that is both powerful and cannot be embodied in just one person. Although, and I say just one person, and this isn't a fully formed thought, so it may be babbling. Relationships and trust are about people. We can't trust an organization. We trust the people in the organization. The reason that Creating the Future is diligently looking to get off Facebook is not because we don't trust Facebook. We don't trust the people at Facebook to make decisions that are in the benefit of humanity and democracy. So yeah, you trust an organization, but it's the people behind the organization. And what you're alluding to, all of you, is sort of this web of relationships, this web of trust, that is more ecosystem, but it's ecosystem within and without the organization, outside of. I found myself scribbling as you were talking, Donna, everyone leading from the middle within the organization and within the community. That we're systematizing relationship and engagement and trust, so that is not embodied in one person, and it frequently is, or two or three people, depending on what that role is. That's really, really powerful.
At the beginning of this conversation, I think it was Carl was talking about including everyone in which we started out talking about succession planning, including that the staff, all the people who are affected, and clearly the community is the biggest entity that is affected. So part of that discussion really has to be that, and I think it would, in many ways, is kind of revolutionary for the community, because organizations don't generally come to the community and say, well, we're about to have a transition in our staff. We want your input on this. We want you to be part of this in terms of what we're doing. It does a lot of different things beyond just the decision that needs to be made or the process that needs to be created. It re-engages the organization with the community. It re-engages them in a way that they've never been engaged before. So I think looking at it from that perspective could be very, very powerful for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, what you're talking about is relationship and engagement as a way of being rather than as one person's job description.
Yeah.
Wow. What else are you all seeing that that this focus on continuity? I love that word. I'm really, really liking it. It is the highest potential for succession planning. Is continuity of what's working, of what's good, of the values of the mission. What else does that make possible? What does it make possible for the people within the organization, whom we listed so many of them last time? What does it make possible for staff, for volunteers?
I'd go back to that sense of calm. I mean, I just, I love the idea of this being a wide open conversation. When we first started doing this, I don't know anybody who was working on succession planning. People just left. I mean, that's how I watch our area anyway. There was no succession planning. They leave, and then whoever just floated from one nonprofit floats into that one. And then, and so I just think the sense of calm, the sense of inclusion, being a part of the decision making, but it being not a dateline of when you finish your succession planning, but that this is a conversation that is always ongoing, because it really is all of us in an equal play, an equal part for our organization and the service or the good that we provide.
That's, I mean, and it does hit every note. I'm thinking about earlier in this conversation, as people were talking about different aspects of organizational life. Justin, you were mentioning it's part of strategic planning, it's part of finance, it's part of that ongoing question. We talk about sustainability as financial sustainability. It's the only thing we ever talk about. When we talk about organizational sustainability, we mean money. And what we're really talking about here is what does it take to sustain the mission, the vision, the values as an ongoing conversation. And what's very clear is that it's not about money. I mean, money's a part of it, but so is so many other things. Nancy.
this whole discussion about continuity is making, especially for internal, is making me think about people's ability to continue to focus. It seems like so many times in succession in organizations in our community, it's so disruptive because everyone's attention and focus is on that transition. And it affects their ability to move their mission forward because it takes this big chunk of their attention and then they have to refocus. And so if this is a continuous process, that doesn't happen. You don't lose that time and energy and commitment.
And you know, I'm thinking about those of you who are in small communities, where you know the smaller a community, the smaller the pool that people think they have to draw from. And I really emphasize think, because we think there's, you know, like 5 people who are good in town, and we're just going to switch them in different roles. Oh, you be ED of this next time, you be CEO of that next time. There's something, again, it comes back to community. There's something rich there. I'm not exactly putting my finger on it, but there's something really rich there about nurturing leadership throughout the community that is part of a succession plan, that is part of continuity. There's something there. Eli.
You know, every time, Hildy, I get an alert from an app you recommended. It's called We Croak. This app reminds you that you're going to die. You know, it's got a quote, a pithy, thoughtful quote about death. And I can't stop thinking about death positivity as something which is starting to kind of percolate in our ecosystem in the West here, right? It's been something which has been part of indigenous life, right? This knowing that, right? The clock is ticking, death is not this thing to avoid, this scary thing. It's just part of life. So I think one of my spiritual teachers said that, you know, death is the opposite of birth, not life. Life encompasses both birth and death. So what if we were to codify this like Naz Daily? Naz Daily is a creator who left his job to go see the world, and he vowed to make a video a day. Every single day I'm gonna make a video, right? The videos were pretty like basic in the beginning. Now he makes like incredible productions highlighting people from all over the world, right? Who you'd have never found, right? This guy who skates in Romania on the road, older guy skates on the road, just like really videos that kind of like capture life. And he wears a t-shirt that has the percentage of his life that is lived. So out of 100, he's got this like 33%. So I was about to rename myself here, you know, and put myself on 40% of my life. What if we did that? Where we're trying to maximize, right, the time that we have, knowing that it's finite, it's limited. What if that could be a value that is part of the succession, ongoing succession discussion?
Wow. Are we bringing out the best in ourselves and each other? Wow. Justin.
Well, I think part of, you know, Eli, what you're talking about is kind of the regenerative nature. Like, are we acknowledging that there is decay that has to happen in order for something to come back and thrive? Which I think is a part of it, is to say that sort of continuity and succession will never be painless, that there might be some pieces that will disappear. But I was going back, Donna, to your comment about the conversation, because I think about internal to organizations, particularly the larger they get, and how much anxiety there is when the positional leadership leaves, because so much of the culture is actually the cult of personality. And there's a big concern that what's going to change, like not even what's going to change in my job, but what's going to be different. And of course, in the nonprofit sector, boards have a pretty bad track record of, you know, I always like to call it the the Toyota Lexus phenomenon, which is every board who runs a Toyota wants a Lexus. So they go shopping on the Lexus car lot and they drive away with the Lexus. And then they realize, oh, shoot, we weren't a Lexus. We can't afford those lease payments. We can't, that's not really who we are. We're really are a Toyota. And perhaps it's the other way. Maybe they're a Lexus and they buy a Toyota. I don't know. But the idea there, I think, to what Donna was saying and what I was really thinking about is, you know, obviously when you say continuity and you start to ask cultures, it's a question of how articulate, how explicit are we of those elements that we want to continue, particularly around the culture. And going back, Hildy, to your comment, organizations are pretty weak in articulation of culture and values. It's just, and so I think that, you know, a lot of times that's what people are looking for, is assurance that the culture and values that they value, not the toxic ones. But let's assume we're continuing good stuff. I think there's a real concern. Like there's that question of, well, do they, you know, it's always that, do they know? Are the people who are making this decision, do they know what we need? And oftentimes there's anxiety that we feel like they don't, because it feels like we haven't had the conversations. We haven't heard people using the language that says, yeah, we are this. And obviously whatever we would put in as a part would be this. And so I think, you know, sort of all of this is this idea that, you know, for the talent of the organization, helping them feel confident that their experience, their working lives, their day-to-day is going to have continuity, what they can expect from the culture, what they can expect from the values, and obviously also what they can expect tactically from the organization. But there's some sense of confidence that either it's going to be continued, or going back to Angie's point, there's going to be deliberation around what we might need to let decay fall off versus, you know, what's reasonable to expand into, those types of questions. That was a bit of a ramble. Sorry.
No, good ramble. A good ramble. It's got me thinking of two examples where, and I mentioned this before, where fear eats values for breakfast. And I've seen it where a beautiful culture of engagement was pretty much dismantled over several years because the board gave into fear of money. And one very strong board member said, you know, all this engagement stuff is very, very cute, but that's not how you raise money. Now let's go out and really raise money. And they all followed that one board member, and that culture has never been back, has never been back. It was one of the most beloved efforts in our local community here, and that culture is gone. It's been 15 years or so. The other one, which I mentioned last time, is a food bank that I was familiar with, that I worked with at one point, where their beloved founder was leaving, had said that he was going to retire. And they had they did a joint board and staff committee to create a job description. And the committee, which was again board and staff, came up with one of the criteria was a passion for social justice. And when this is a food bank, makes perfect sense. When that was brought to the board for approval, the treasurer of the board said, and I am quoting now, "What is this social justice shit?" And the other board member who happened to be on the committee said, well, it made the staff happy that we allowed them to include it. So when we're talking about values, the continuity of values is what the community wants to see. They want to see the continuity of mission, that you're going to keep doing the stuff that's good, that you're going to keep doing it in a way that adheres to the values that they appreciate. And the internal, generally at the board level, because they're the ones who feel that responsibility, fear is going to eat those values up. So what the community wants is the values and the mission, and the board is the one that is so subject to fear. So what does good look like for boards when it comes to this sense of continuity and succession? Yeah, Nora.
Not quite sure of what I'm saying, so I may ramble a bit as well.
You're in good company.
I think I work directly with a board, like many of you do here, and I think that the part of what is good for the board, or what the good outcome is, you're only going to get it if you start working closely with the board early on around the importance of the culture in the organization and the values of the organization. They need to have as strong a commitment to and an understanding of the values of the organization as the staff complement. Values-based leadership is a passion of mine. And one of the things that I have embedded in my organization, I have a values ambassadors team of frontline staff. And the role of that committee is to keep the values of the organization front and center and on the top of everyone's mind, so that all of our decisions can be made with a bit of a check and balance against, are these decisions coming from a values rooted place? And I've involved all of my board in that same process in terms of doing personal values assessments, being brought into the development of the values for the organization. And it's something we constantly talk about and I report on in my, my reports to the board. So when I'm looking at succession or continuity, which I also really love, I think that's a brilliant way of looking at it. My board knows already what some of those really important pieces around the culture and the values are going to be when they're in the place of having to look for my successor. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of the approach that we've taken.
What it's sparking for me is that, and again, this is about continuity, that recruitment of board members is part of continuity. And we are taught to recruit board members for their ability to bring in money, their ability to bring in connections, we need business people on the board. We all of those isms that we get ourselves accustomed to. What you're talking about really is recruitment is a big part of that. Is the culture of the organization and the culture of the board can't be different. They must be the same. And again, that's people. It's right. A board is not a thing. It is a group of people. But wow, that's powerful in terms of who does one recruit to the board.
And just to follow up on that, Hildy, we deliberately changed our recruitment practices and our board sort of postings to reflect the fact that, because you're right, I mean, up to now we almost had the checklist. Do you have a lawyer on your board? Do you have a finance person? Do you have a banker, XYZ? And we've got rid of that and decided also to recruit for people, because we're trying to attract a larger, more diverse and include and be more inclusive, so that we're really getting the voices of the community on the board. So we've had to recognize that many people have not had those same opportunities, have not had the same privileges that most still to this day, most voices on boards represent, right? I mean, most corporate boards are made up of white men, quite honestly. And so to try to move away from the expectation of who we have on the board so that we can bring in the different voices. And it does create some challenges. Some people, they don't have the same level of understanding of financial statements sometimes. You have to do a little bit more education. But again, if that's where your values are centered, then you work towards finding ways around that and making sure that they have the background and the training that they need. Sorry, I can go off in a bit of a rant. Like I said, this is a bit of a passion.
Yay. Awesome. One of the things, and Carl, you brought this up last time, continuity can be fabulous, but continuity of how many white faces are there on the screen right now? Continuity of the same old, isn't living our values and isn't living the values of community. And is frequently a value that might be articulated but not executed at an organizational level. What does good look like? And Donna, your comment first, but then if y'all will be thinking about what does good look like through that lens of inclusion and equity? Donna, your thoughts?
I'm going to go back to we talked a while back about roles and talking about succession planning of key positions. Why do we have these key positions? Why are we not looking at what are you really great at and picking up those things and who's really great at this? And we have roles. Why wouldn't we be thinking the same way with boards? And I'm in a luxury position really, because I mean, the board pretty much, if I say, hey, let's talk about this, that they go, okay. So we have those conversations when somebody decides to go off our board. Here's my first conversation. Do you love this organization? Are you still passionate about our work? And they go, absolutely love this organization. But, I always need to jump onto another board. And I go, what part of this do you still want to be a part of? So all those things that I can do, but I am not efficient and good at, I've got my finance person still. He does 30 minutes a month and pulls our finances together. And that's huge for me. I've got an attorney who doesn't come to meetings, but all I do is a quick email or phone call saying, hey, we're in this position. What's your recommendation? So why wouldn't we look at doing the same thing with boards as we're talking about succession? This is like complete continuity succession planning throughout your organization. Yeah, I mean, we don't look for people with money because, those aren't the ones usually coming to our board. We teach them how to tell stories. That's how we do what we do. So anyway, that just made me think as we were talking.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about the equity lens. Let's talk about inclusion. Let's talk about, I'll share with you that because creating the future has been small and almost entirely volunteer driven, and when folks are paid, it has been stipend wages. And we are looking to step into what is next for creating the future, which is pretty significant. We have the opportunity to really look at the question of what do we want this organization to look like? What do we want the faces on this screen to look like? Gender, ability, race, ethnicity. I mean, go down the list of what it has not looked like in the past and what it needs to look like in order to be effective. So what does succession and continuity look like and make possible through that equity lens? What does good look like? In my mind, one answer is that it looks like deliberately and intentionally reaching out to people that have not been deliberately and intentionally reached out to before. In our work, we've just sort of done it the way we've done it. We haven't really reached out, quote unquote, to anybody. People have been attracted to creating the future, and they are either attracted through what they read, they're attracted through seeing somebody do a speaking engagement, etc. And so whoever has shown up has shown up. That has skewed in terms of the people who have stuck around to 40 and over, I'm going to say, and tended to be white and tended to be female. I've not done an analysis, but mostly that has been, if you look at our classes, if you look at, it's been people who are over 40, tended to be white, tended to be women. And we know that one of our big steps is to deliberately and intentionally make that different. But that's a doing thing. What does good look like, though? When you're talking about continuity of mission and continuity of values, what does good look like through that equity lens?
Ildi, I come back to maybe something I said earlier is that I think you've almost got to be careful that we don't frame change and continuity as opposing forces, because you can ensure that you continue with your mission by changing. And I guess that's the point that I was sort of trying to make before, is that too often I think organizations think that they're continuing with their mission by not changing. So a good succession planning approach is one that recognizes that the only way that you can continue your mission sometimes is by changing and by thinking about how the world outside has changed around you. Because this may be a bit unfair, but it strikes me that lots of organizations that I've seen, the biggest problem that they tend to have, they talk all the time about, oh, well, we're really worried that funding is our biggest challenge. That's the one I come across all the time. Funding is our biggest challenge. I think a lot of the time it's not. I think their biggest challenge is remaining relevant, and remaining relevant to what's happening in the outside world, to how you deliver your mission, to the people that you've got inside your organization, and ensuring that they reflect the community that you serve and that they haven't become sort of too distant from it. So the potential for me, as you sort of say, in terms of looking at it through the equity lens, is that it gives you that opportunity to ask yourselves the question, are we still relevant to the mission, and do we need to change so that we're relevant to the mission? And that's continuity, but it's change at the same time. Sorry if that's a bit.
It's evolution. It's evolution. Yeah. Justin, brilliant, Carl. Thank you.
So there are two thoughts that are coming. One is I kind of go back to Angie's thought, which is I think making a distinction, and Carl, this is some of what you're talking about too, also, is like there should be a process for organizational design. I mean, just like rather than thinking about continuity planning as the way to get to just solid theory of change and what does it take to create benefit, like that should be going on in an organization in my mind. So I just want to be cautious, which is certainly continuity and that planning of change allows for adjustments around what might be inequitable, but one would hope that the organization isn't waiting for transition to actually be addressing that. Like the organization should have been addressing this beforehand. That's kind of my response, is that continuity shouldn't be addressing equity. The organization should always be addressing that as just a core design question. And then, Carl, as you were talking too, something popped into my head. I don't know if it was something specific that you talked about with change, but we always talk about continuity or even succession as someone leaving. What happens when we reframe that question to say, what does continuity planning look like that gives us permission to get rid of people? Because to Carl's point, if we're just waiting until people leave, we're waiting too long. So our continuity planning should actually be having us assess our talent. To, I think, Nora, what you were saying around your board, like we're not waiting until you leave. Like, we're not thinking about how we're going to replace you. We might actually be thinking about how we're going to get rid of you, because for us to be successful, we might need a different body of talent. So I guess when you ask, what does good look like, a succession plan or a continuity plan would also have the tools for us to competently and confidently remove talent that's not aligned, or realign it, however realignment means. Sometimes that's separation, sometimes it's retraining, but we should be just as conscious about separating people as we are about replacing people.
And I think the same thing in terms of the work. We don't shed programs that are no longer aligned with culture and values, or potentially mission, because they bring in funding. So we're constantly, I'm thinking of food banks that are trying to change culture to focus more on ensuring that people are living well independently in their lives. And yet they are still reliant on things like federal food commodities and all of that stuff, which is, but 3/4 of our budget is about giving out food. So what are we, I mean, there's a big piece there, Justin, in terms of being willing to evolve continuity of values. What we thought was important in the 70s when everybody was forming food banks was feeding people. And it is important, but it's important as a step towards, as one of many steps towards. It's just real interesting to be thinking about continuity of values in that sense.
I have a quick thing. And I'm not sure exactly how this applies, but I'm just sort of thinking about all of the, the comment that you just made, Justin, about, how do you change personalities when it's based on personality? How do you get rid of somebody? And it makes me wonder the component that is ego that's involved in leadership. That you can't get rid of me. I started this organization. I did, whatever. It was my vision. It was my this. It was my that. And how do you integrate that shift where that someone's going to die eventually? I mean, they can't go on forever, or that the circumstances that they were so good at addressing don't exist anymore, which is what you were talking about. Yet they are so committed to their own legacy, to their own, that it overrides even the mission at that point. It just becomes about that person. And I'm just, sort of thinking out loud, how do you integrate this into the systems so that it is understood, expected, whatever, so that it doesn't become the cult of personality around some individual who may be very effective at some time at accomplishing something. But how do you create that long-term addressing of those issues? So I don't really have an answer, but I'm just sort of struggling with how do you build that into the process so that it is not only expected, but it is automatic. This is what's going to happen here. We're going to evaluate the community. We're going to talk to people. We're going to do whatever. Are we relevant? Is what we're doing? I always go back to Easter seals. Oh, we took care of polio, so now we're going to just use the same name and go do something else. So it wasn't, the organization didn't dissolve. The organization continued with some new mission, which wasn't what brought it into being in the first place.
So what would good look like?
That's what I'm struggling with.
For some reason, I'm thinking about like an exit interview that's done at the beginning of the interview process. You know how sometimes
Oh,
companies
that's interesting.
separate, right? So you incorporate that at the very beginning. I think LinkedIn, when they hire people, they say, what is your next job after LinkedIn? And how can we help you get there? Right? Because the reality is not almost no one always wants to be at the same place for the rest of their life, typically. So baking that into the interview process, I think could be an interesting way, Dimitri, to include this. Right?
Wow. Wow. Mark.
Yeah, Eli, I love that. It's your first day, and when are you leaving? It's a little disconcerting, I think, in some circumstances. But by the same token, I mean, they've used that question in a very shallow way over the last 50 years that I've looked for jobs. It's like, oh, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Right? That's the stupid question. Oh, yeah, I own the company, or, I'm going to be your worst competitor. I don't know, but there's no honesty there. I don't trust these people. I just got here. So I think you're going to have some sort of a different culture going in. They've got to know your culture going in to know that you're being honest, that you are including them, that it is safe for me to tell you that I want your job. And maybe that's okay too, because maybe I don't want my job in 5 years. Maybe I want to be somewhere else. So I think that we're back to the values of inclusivity and honesty and safety. They have to be there. And I think there's not very much of it out there, but that's me.
Well, we are at 10 minutes to the hour. I could keep going here for another hour and a half. The good stuff just keeps getting better and better and better. And I hope we will keep thinking about this. If you are part of the cohort, Nora, Donna, Mark, I know Andrew is listening, Angie, Nancy, please dive into the discussion, and if you think of things, just be posting it into the forum. I will be sending out a scheduling email so that we can get a live Q&A time together, so that we've got our keep going on this. What I will ask right now is that we all take a deep breath. This has been a very, very intense conversation, a wonderful conversation. So let's just breathe in and out. Many of us are holding our breath these days. We suddenly look up and go, I haven't had a whole breath in a long time. If you took any notes, look over your notes and circle anything that stood out to you. And let's take a moment and share your reflections. What is standing out to you from our conversation today? Anyone who wants to go first, just dive on in.
I'll go first. But just to follow, and also a little bit of follow up to the previous conversation, but I really, I keep thinking about the idea of building sort of, around an organism, or building around people's abilities, or what they're passionate about, as a way to, and then building sort of redundancies across that as a way to build sustainability and resilience, but also to, I guess, continuing to support people and support a more diversity of people who are able to probably participate if we were doing more of that. That's my main takeaway.
I'd put a big star also by what Mark was saying about organisms versus organizations, and thinking in terms of organisms have structure and yet are living and evolving. And what does that look like when we're talking about succession and continuity?
Beautiful. Yeah, Mark.
I'm taking notes while we're all talking, because I know that Justin really set me off here with the whole idea of succession and and I don't want to replace these terms because continuity is certainly still useful, because I'm seeing succession as structure and I'm seeing continuity as the process. It's the understory versus damaged tree roots. It's a new president, the succession of a new president without a revolution, which would be the continuity that we plan on. We have a continuity, what's a continuity of government plan? You know, the president, vice president, speaker of the house, blah, blah, blah. So there's your continuity, succession and continuity, or a heart transplant where the heart is extremely important to the organism. You may have to look for a replacement, but I want the continuity to be that I want to live through the operation.
Hope so. Beautiful, thank you. Who else? What is standing out to you from our conversation today?
I'll jump in because mine's just following up on that. One of the many things that I've circled is the outcome that we're looking for, the continuity, but that succession is one of the conditions for it. And I think that makes a lot of sense to me, that the continuity is what we're trying to achieve so that we maintain the values, the mission, the trust, the confidence of your staff, your community, your board, and that succession is one of the things that may have to happen in order to make sure that continuity exists.
Thank you.
I think for me, and I really appreciate Nora and Donna, you talking about sort of your experience within your organizations specifically, but just that essence of, you know, fundamentally at the core, this is about knowing and naming your culture first and foremost. So really thinking about that as, you know, one of the core conditions that any kind of continuity or succession success is going to depend on.
I circled codifying systems is more important than the people. Right? That rigor of really documenting and being very clear about the specifics, where everything is, and also that succession is about an ecosystem of trust, systematizing relationships, engagement.
Yep. Wonderful, thank you.
So I'm reflecting on, Eli, you just mentioned ecosystem, and earlier Mark was talking about planting young trees around that. It really, when you think about an ecosystem, all the parts of the ecosystem work together. The new information about, roots between trees and plants are all communicating information back and forth so that they do form a community. And I'm thinking about this from the perspective of community. I'm also kind of reflecting on the word decay. We look in our culture, decay is not a good thing, but in an ecosystem, it is a vital thing. Without that, there is no ecosystem. It has to, everything has to go back into the system in order for there be rebirth and regrowth and whatever. So the change is, and I think part of the culture is that the change is a good thing, that the transition is a good thing, that, we're working at continuity, and that's a good thing, but part of how we do that is through new voices, new faces. Hilda, you were talking about inclusion earlier. That's part of what creates that ecosystem, to be able to do that.
Yeah, Mark just noted dynamic change is a good thing. Stasis is death. In the chat. Thank you for that. Yeah, beautiful. Yes. Carl, how about you? What's standing out to you? And then Donna.
So the first thing that's standing out to me is not, disappointingly perhaps for you, Hildy, is not about the subject matter, but it's actually just about the vibe of being here and everyone here. And it's just brought a really nice energy, having everyone here today. And it's been really nice hearing other people's views. And it's these sorts of conversations that sort of like make me feel energized. about creating the future. So thanks everyone. In terms of sort of the topic, I mean, as per usual, I mean, I sort of think that there's always sort of these huge insights that sort of come out of this, and it's made me think as well. And the thing that everyone made me think about today is this whole sort of continuity versus sort of change thing, and how we use this sort of language to stop things from happening sometimes, to stop change from happening. And I think that for me, what I learned from that was quite an important insight for me today.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Jackie, oh, I'm sorry, Donna, and then Jackie.
So thank you, Carl, for that. Change is a must. I mean, I agree with you. I am so happy that I am able to be with this group of people thinking together. It's been a long time since I've gotten to play in this arena, and it's just so nice to have a safe place to just have conversation about whatever, moving towards what we're talking about. So change to me is a must. And I think my other takeaway, Hildy, I loved your part of fear eats values for breakfast. I really want to keep that, because when I think about our board and how little change they've made, and it's funny because I'm able to do this in so many communities and see really positive things happen, but I have a board that are all lovely people and all have a passion for what we do. But their being is it's just hard for them. and it makes my heart sad that I have not been able to impact that. But fear is a piece of that. They only know what they know. And me meeting them where they're at is my hardest thing, I think. I'm always moving ahead. And so thank you for just this conversation. This is such a cool thing, because this needs to be a part of every organization from the beginning, not a conversation as we are all starting to look at what we will do next in our lives to make this world a better place. So thank you all.
Yeah, brilliant, beautiful. Jackie, how about you?
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking a lot about how we've been framing a lot of these conversations. Of course, succession planning is kind of by definition an ending or a change for something, but I'm also thinking of, on the flip side, that also by definition it's a beginning, because you're bringing someone else or some different structure in. And I'm just kind of processing in my own mind, how does it feel different to talk about it as a beginning and an introduction, rather than a saying goodbye and a closing, and just how does that kind of feel different in my own mind?
Wow. I think that's a beautiful place for us to pick up next time. That's a beautiful sentiment. This has been a wonderful conversation. I know that we are all on our way out of here today, and what I am leaving with is just the energy of the conversation, the sense of continuity, and the importance of values in this, and the gratitude that this board has spent so much time focusing on our values, and has chosen its role as integrity. That's integrity to our values. That's feeling very real in this conversation. So thank you all. And for those in the cohort, I will see you online. And for the rest, I will see you next month. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.